Hi, ArcfieldWeather.com meteorologist Paul Dorian here on Wednesday afternoon, September 3rd. Quite an interesting weather pattern, I think, evolving here for the next couple of weeks. First of all, in the Mid-Atlantic region, Northeast U.S., we've been very, very dry for the last several weeks. One of the driest Augusts in many parts of the Mid-Atlantic region. Washington, D.C., for example, officially only recorded 0.2 inches during the entire month of August, that being at Reagan National Airport, DCA. It looks like we have the best chance in quite a while for some rainfall on two different occasions in the near term across the northeastern part of the nation. One late tomorrow night with a cold frontal system, and then a second chance late Saturday night with another cold frontal system. Those cold fronts will usher in some unusually cold air for this time of the year across the northern plains, the upper Midwest, the Great Lakes, and then eventually spilling over into the Mid-Atlantic Northeast U.S. later this week. And I do expect that there will likely be some numerous record lows or near record lows across the northern plains, the upper Midwest, the Great Lakes from later this week into the upcoming week. And the tropical scene in the Atlantic Basin also becoming more and more interesting. We have a strong wave right now, very likely to become a named tropical storm, and it could become a big player, an important player in maybe 10 days or so. We're talking maybe the middle of the month of September, something we're going to have to closely monitor over the next several days. Here is that system right now over the far eastern Atlantic. We've talked about the peak of the Atlantic Basin tropical season comes right around September 10th or so, and one of the reasons that is the peak time period is sea surface temperatures tend to reach their peak at least in portions of the Atlantic Basin late August, and especially during the early middle parts of September. The warmer the water temperatures, the more favorable the overall conditions for development or intensification of tropical cyclones. Well, here is that system again, a very good chance of becoming the next named tropical storm. It'll slowly move over the next several days in a general west to northwest fashion, could have some kind of an impact on some of the islands, such as Puerto Rico, in several days, and then eventually, maybe in this particular area by the time we get to the middle of September. Now, I also want to take a look at the Eastern Pacific right now. We've just had a look at one important system in the Atlantic Basin, the far eastern Atlantic. There are two hurricanes right now in the Eastern Pacific Ocean. A couple things I want to point out. First of all, this sends a red flag that there is some strong upward motion going on right now in the eastern part of the Pacific Ocean. We often talk about that Madden-Julian oscillation, which kind of tracks a tropical disturbance that propagates on a regular basis eastward. Well, the upward motion over the Eastern Pacific Ocean is headed towards the Atlantic Basin, and that is another reason why I expect to see overall activity picking up as we get to that climatod or peak around September 10th to the 15th or so. So indeed, we're kind of going through a quiet period here over the past several days, but it should become more and more active over the next few weeks, beginning maybe in a week or so. Of course, we have that one system right now, but the upward motion right here will be shifting and and causing some more favorable environmental conditions for tropical activity in the Atlantic Basin by the time we get to the middle of September. Now, this is a very interesting hurricane as well, as it will, instead of the usual track out over the open waters, it looks like it'll kind of curve back in this fashion and cause some very heavy rainfall here across the northwestern part of Mexico. And a lot of that moisture will end up going into the southwestern states, such as New Mexico. We have been getting decent rainfall in places like New Mexico, Arizona, Colorado, and Utah with the normal monsoonal moisture this time of the year, that moisture coming in kind of a seasonal wind off the Eastern Pacific Ocean. Well, you throw in some tropical moisture from this particular hurricane, and you can get some excessive rainfall places like New Mexico over the next several days, something we'll watch out for as this system takes a turn right into the northwestern part of Mexico. Could also cause some significant rainfall across the western part of Texas as well over the next several days. Now let's get back to the continental U.S., and we have a lot to talk about here. First of all, unusually chilly air for this time of the year. Right now, spreading south and east into the northern plains, the upper Midwest, and will go across the Great Lakes region. Still some cooler than normal air hanging on along the eastern seaboard here at the midweek. But this is the big story right here. Very unusual chilly air moving in from Canada into the north central states, and it slowly slides to the east. It does not make its way all the way into the northeastern U.S. or the mid-Atlantic region initially. That will wait for a secondary cold front that comes through on Saturday night before this cool air mass will cool down the mid-Atlantic and northeast U.S. But here we go by Thursday evening, and then by Friday morning, and again, I expect to see numerous record lows or near record lows across the northern plains, the upper part of the Midwest later this week, going into the upcoming weekend. And here we go a little farther in time. And again, notice that initial blast of the cool air did not make its way to the mid-Atlantic or the northeast U.S., but it will at this particular time, or for the second half of the upcoming weekend. Here is a strong frontal system, that second frontal system I alluded to, right here as of midday on Saturday. Widespread, cooler than normal air mass out across the northern plain, the upper Midwest, the Great Lakes region. That does make its way into the mid-Atlantic, the northeast U.S. by the time we get to next Monday morning. Way below normal temperatures. Places like D.C., Philadelphia, New York City likely to hold in the 70s on Sunday and Monday as well, with this very chilly air for this time of the year, spreading eastward from the northern plains, upper Midwest, Great Lakes, finally into the mid-Atlantic, northeast U.S. by the time we get to Sunday and Monday of early next week. Also, notice the continuation of a pattern that we kind of saw all summer long, where some cooler than normal air masses pushing off the eastern Pacific Ocean into California, Washington, and Oregon. That will be the case once again by the time we get to the latter part of the weekend, the early part of next week. Now let's take a look at the 500 millibar height anomaly pattern. And I want to kind of point out a red flag to me that far eastern Atlantic tropical wave could become an important player near the eastern seaboard in about 10 days or so, somewhere around the middle part of September. Specifically, I see the potential for a strong upper-level ridge to move over southeastern Canada by the time we get to the middle of the month. That always sends a red flag to me this time of the year, as it could open the door for undercutting of the ridge with some tropical systems moving from the east to the west. And we'll see that right now. We have the strong upper-level trough spinning over the Great Lakes, way below normal temperatures associated with this trough here. And then we kind of have that secondary push, that secondary front. That is the one that will send a frontal system crashing through the eastern states Saturday afternoon, Saturday night time frame, and it cools things down to well below normal levels for Sunday and Monday in the northeastern part of the nation. Again, expect to see lots of record lows or near record lows from the northern plains to the upper Midwest, to the Great Lakes, potentially even ultimately in the northeastern part of the nation. Here we go now into the middle part of next week. That trough goes away, and we start to see an initial burst of upper-level ridging, higher heights than normal over the northeastern part of the U.S. by the middle of next week. We're now looking at next Wednesday, a week from right now. But this is the upper-level ridge I'm really focused on right now. That slides from central Canada all the way into the southeastern part of Canada right here by the time we get to the middle of the month. And here's a reflection of that tropical system on the latest run of the GFS. This is this morning's run of the GFS, a 12Z run right here. And this sends a red flag to me. Anytime you see strong high pressure ridging over southeastern Canada, it kind of opens the door for the possible undercutting of the ridge and tropical systems moving from east to west. So this is something several days away, but certainly something we'll keep our eyes on here as we go through the next several days again, possibility of some trouble right in this area here in about 10, 11, 12 days or so, the middle part of September. Now let's walk through the surface forecast maps, again using the 12Z run of the GFS, this morning's run of the GFS. First of all, notice a little bit of blue showing up here. We're now into that time of the year where we start to see some snowfall here. This is depicted on the 12Z GFS way up in Canada. Nonetheless, this is kind of indicative of a chilly air mass right here. And this is front number 1 that we're looking at right here midday on Wednesday. That front slides slowly to the south and east, and it does lose some of its punch by the time it reaches the northeastern part of the nation late tomorrow night. It does undergo a weakening process. However, I think it'll still be capable of producing maybe a quarter to a half an inch of rainfall in places like D.C., Philadelphia, New York City late tomorrow night into early Friday. Doesn't sound like much, and it's really not a particularly heavy soaking rain event, but it certainly will be welcome in the dry, parched mid-Atlantic region. Again, this is kind of a weakening frontal system. That's the initial front, and it loses enough punch that the cold air that was over the northern plains, Great Lakes, does not really extend all the way into the northeastern part of the nation, at least not initially. It waits for a second cold front. And here is that second cold front. By the time we get to Saturday morning, it's starting to show up right in this area right here. There's a second cold front right here, and yet another chilly air mass by this time moving into the northern plains, the upper Midwest. This second cold front can produce some rainfall across the Mid-Atlantic region late Saturday night, maybe even an isolated thunderstorm or two. And there may even be an interesting wave off the Carolina coast that gets intertwined with this frontal system, potentially enhancing the rainfall across some coastal sections, let's say from Mid-Atlantic to New England on late Saturday night time frame, early Sunday time frame, something to watch out for. That moves away by Sunday morning, and we have this strong high pressure system that originated in Canada, drops south and east into the north central U.S., and this is a unseasonably cool air mass that will encompass the entire region from the northern plains to northern New England down to the mid-Atlantic region. Again, expect to see numerous record lows or near record lows later this week, through the upcoming week, and especially across the northern plains, the upper Midwest, and the Great Lakes region. Let's now go out a little bit farther in time. This is Sunday. Forecast map. That high certainly controls the weather across the northeastern part of the nation, all the way into the early part of next week, sitting right on top of New York State by early next week. This is Tuesday. And another feature I want to point out, there will be this frontal boundary zone or some kind of a boundary zone hanging along the eastern seaboard early to middle part of next week. This is something to watch. I think it may become active enough that there could be some rainfall spreading westward into the east coast areas here. This is maybe by the middle part of next week. This particular model run did not have that scenario right here. It kind of hangs off the coast here, but I do believe this is now a week from right now. This is something to watch for the early and middle part of next week. Kind of the coastal boundary zone here sets up with a lot of moisture, of course, over the western part of the Atlantic Ocean. So this is just something else to watch later next week. But in the near term, we have our best chance of some rainfall in the Mid-Atlantic, Northeast U.S. Two occasions here, late tomorrow night with front number 1, and late Saturday night with front number 2. There will be an unseasonably cool air mass already penetrating into the north central part of the nation. That will spread east to the Great Lakes over the next day or two, and then a secondary push of that cold air, reinforcement of a cold air mass over the northern plains, Great Lakes, and eventually by Sunday, that moves into the Mid-Atlantic, Northeast U.S. And the tropics will become quite interesting, I believe, over the next couple of weeks. So we'll certainly continue to be focused on the Atlantic Basin region. That's it for now. For ArcfieldWeather.com, this has been meteorologist Paul Dorian.